Hey guys, Mr. Bowman here. Today's learning objective is in red, and we are learning to calculate the mean, median, and mode from given data sets. And I've made up two data sets here just to illustrate these, and we do need two annoyingly because it does help with some of our discussions. So let's start off with the easiest one actually. Let's have a look at the mode. And the mode is the most common value in the data set. And the mode can be a bit tricky. Sometimes there might be one mode, but there may also be times where there's no mode, and that's where there is no repeat data coming up. And sometimes there may also be multiple modes. And that's where you've got maybe two doubles of two separate distinct numbers. So let's have a look at data set number 1 just to check. And I can see the value number 6 coming up twice, which means the mode here will be equal to 6. And looking at data set number 2 on the right, we can see there's no number coming up more than once. So what that means here is there is no mode. Let's now move on to the mean. So slightly different idea. This one's a bit more mathy, but it tends to be straightforward ones that people are really confident with. So the mean, the best way to understand the mean is by looking at a formula. So the formula I'm going to give you is I'm going to give you that little sigma, which we've looked at before, divided by n. And just a reminder, that sigma means the sum of divided by the n as well. And a really important thing for the mean, we commonly refer this to as the average, but we should avoid using that word average. And another really important idea for the mean is the mean can end up with decimals. And that's because you're dividing by n. And that may give you some messy scenarios. You might have some recurring numbers, some messy other ones popping up as well. So let's apply this to our scenarios here. So data set number 1, the mean. I'm going to write down my formula first because whenever you're dealing with a formula, it is best to write down the formula. So sum of divided by n. The sum of is going to be all the numbers in the data set added together. So there they are. They're all added together. And n relates to the number of pieces of data in your data set. So we had 3 over here. Here's another 2, which makes 5. Here's another 2, that makes 7. And in this case, that there is going to be equal to 5.29. And this here, because we're dividing by 7, it ended up being with quite a messy number. So I'm just going to state my rounding of 2 decimal points. Let's recap how that works for the next data set. So the mean, going to be a fairly similar process. Because I'm dealing with a formula, I'm going to jot down my formula and I'm going to go divide by n. The sum of, in this case, is going to be 3 plus 9 plus 10 plus 8 plus 7 plus 2 plus 1, and then I'm going to squeeze plus 5 in just on the edge there. And that's going to be divided by n, the number of bits of data we have. We've got 4 over here and 4 over here, which gives us 8 in total. So that's going to be equal to 5.625. And this was a messier number, but because it was a perfect number after 3DP, I'm not going to have to worry about any rounding. And finally, we're going to look at the median now. And the median was the reason we ended up needing two data sets to explore here. And the reason is the outcome when there is an odd n, and remember n being the number of bits of data in your data set, we used it for the mean before, and an even n, it is a slightly different approach. So when you have an odd n, and we'll see this in data set number 1, you're going to be left with one median number. And at this point here, it's really easy to figure out the median. When there's an even numbers of data, you're going to be left with two median numbers. in which case you're going to have to add them up. So for example, let's just say they're x and y, and we're going to have to chop them in half like that. So that approach will apply for one of our data sets. So let's look into the two data sets that we have. So we've got 7 bits of data here. So this one's going to be a nice example. But before we do that, we've got to order the data. So let's order it from smallest to largest. So we had 2, 3, 5, 6, 6, 7, and 8. So there's all the bits of data. And I now encourage us to find the median. We're going to cross out the first number, cross out the last number, cross out the first number, cross out the last number. And we repeat this process until we're left with 1 or 2 numbers in the middle. So cross out first, cross out last, we're left with 5 or 6 in the middle there. So in this case here, it's really easy. We're now confidently being able to say the median here is equal to 6. Let's have a look at data set number 2. This is going to be the slightly more annoying version. But similar first step, we're going to have to put all the data in order. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 8, 9, and 10. We're then going to do the similar steps. We're going to cross out the first one, cross out the last one, cross out the first, cross out the last, cross out the first, cross out the last. And this time around, we're left with 2 numbers in the middle instead of 1. So we had 1 number over here. Now we're left with 2 numbers over here. So when we have 2 numbers, the median will be equal to the 2 numbers added together divided by 2, which is going to be 12 over 2, which is going to be 6. So by chance, they have the same median for these particular scenarios. So that's how to calculate the mean, median, and mode. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to clear the data or the information that I have on the screen, and we're going to get into some tricky examples to see how can I incorporate a little bit of algebra to extend my knowledge of these. I'm going to focus on a discussion on the mean. So we're now up to the exciting bit, and something I want to emphasize is whenever there's a formula, there's an opportunity to use algebra. And if you recall our discussion, we had 2 formulas. We knew that the mean was equal to the sum of all the values divided by n. And we also knew that the median, when there were 2 values, was x plus y over 2, where x and y were those 2 values. So we got 2 formulas, we got 2 opportunities to apply algebra in these settings. So focusing on the mean first, I've got a question for us. 5 students sat a surprise quiz, and these students had an average score. So just a reminder, when we say the word average, that normally refers to the word mean. The next day, a 6th person sat this quiz, and the mean dropped to 7. What did the 6th person get? So let's start by thinking algebraically about this first bit here. So we had 5 people sit a test, and they had an average of 7.2. So that means the sum divided by the n was equal to 7.2. We knew that the sum, we don't know the sum, but we knew there were 5 people and they scored 7.2 in total. So what we're going to do is we're going to go times 5 times 5. So that means the sum here was 36. We're now going to get on to the second bit of information about the 6th person sitting this. And this is when we're going to go back to our initial equation just to make some edits. So what's going to happen is the sum, that's going to increase by the score that the person got. And that's our unknown. That's what the equation's asked us for. So at this point here, we're going to be going plus x. We also know n, because 1 extra person has sat the test. N is going to be increased by 1. And finally, because the score or the average changed, we're going to get rid of the 7.2 and that's going to become 7. So focusing on this, I know it looks a bit messy at this stage. We've made a whole bunch of changes and we've now got an algebraic equation. So what we're going to have, our equation is the sum plus x divided by n plus 1 is equal to 7. So that was all the changes that we talked about. We can now go ahead and solve this. So we know that was going to be, if we move up in this direction, 36 was the sum plus x, which is the score of the person, divided by n plus 1. Well, that's going to be 6 now. and that there must equal to 7. And at this stage here, we're just going to use our algebra solving to finish this answer off. And hopefully you can recall there's invisible brackets on the top. So we're going to go times 6 times 6. So that means x plus 36 is equal to 42. We're then going to go minus 36 minus 36. So x in this case is equal to 6. So that means the sixth person got a quiz score of 6, and that meant the total average dropped to 7. Now, finally, we're going to look into the mean, and I've got a new question for us. And this example is a bit more convoluted, but it's an interesting one nonetheless. So we had 8 people set another quiz, and Mr. Bowman recorded all the results below. So here's all the results, but I've spilt something on the data. So that's what this green stuff is. So I've spilt something all over the data, and I'm covering up one of the numbers now. If the median was 5, what was the missing number? So the first thing we know is 8 means there is an odd value of n, which means there are going to be 2 central numbers for the median. And our formula for that, so the median, and I've written it up before, is equal to x plus y over 2. Now the missing number, I'm going to draw over the thing there. I've drawn an x there because I don't know what that is. And if I cross out the first 3 and the last 3, that means the middle 2 values would have been the x, the covered up number, and the 6. So the median, 5, is going to be equal to x plus 6 divided by 2. So the median was given to us in the question. We were told the new median is 5, and we know the 2 central values. So that's going to be 10 is going to be equal to x plus 6, and we're going to go minus 6 minus 6. So x is equal to 4. So that means that missing number, that number that I've covered up by my spills, that there should have been 4, and that would have given us a median of 5. So thanks so much for watching this video. Hopefully you can calculate the mean, the median, and the mode now, and hopefully you're able to use a bit of insight and how to change your equations into a bit of algebra with those last 2 questions as well. Thanks so much for watching. Now let's get into heaps of practice.